And welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Wednesday, February 6th. I am the host for today's program, Paul Devane, and many of the stories read here can also be found at our websites, IndianCountryNews.com and IndianCountryTV.com. And here are the news stories for the day. It was another session of the Native Youth Olympics held in the Soldotna High School, and teams throughout the region were competing this last weekend in what many people feel initially is an odd Olympics, with ear-pulling contests and high kicks and those kinds of things. But here we feature a clip by alaskapublic.org that shows teams during a 2012 risk-carrying competition this last weekend.
Risk carrying on a marked track, basically an oval track that is set out on the floor. The athletes start in the middle and they can go either right or left. It is up to them, depending if they're right-handed or left-handed. Athlete sits down in any fashion they want. They will make a fist, a closed fist. They will fold that over the stick, and once that's folded over stick, just their wrist is on the stick. From there, their free hand grabs around the forearm, and from there, whenever they're in, the carriers just pick them up off the floor and they just hang only by the wrist. And the carriers start running around the track. And the idea is to go as far as they can. They get one attempt, carry it properly until either they fall or they slip off or something of that nature. Only the wrist is on the stick. They can't have the knuckles or fingers or anything like that holding on the stick. They must only have the wrist on the stick, and then their grasping hand must be holding firmly on the forearm. And accidental bumping is fine of the fist, but they can't leverage against them to give them an extra advantage. Carry, the big thing they can't do is twist the stick. Which if they twist the stick inward, it'd help keep the athlete's wrist on the stick better. And that's why we have the lines on the stick so we can see if they're twisting. So the idea of the carriers is to carry level, even as you see sometimes in the run, the outside carrier will bank higher. So kind of like do that banking effect going around the corner, try to help like you see in NASCAR or so forth, just to give that so they're not sliding off the stick. Scary. Is definitely a history of, as they get animals, some of it is to be able to pack that meat back to the village. Having the endurance to do so, to be able to go after the animal as the animal gives itself to the hunters while they're there.
And the Native Youth Olympics has been held at the high school since at least 1971. At that time, youth were being pulled from villages and placed into boarding schools, and the games were a way to preserve Native cultures in a big city like Anchorage, according to NYO head official Sam Strange. But they have been around longer than that, the 70s and earlier, Strange said. For generations, the games practiced at NYO have passed from village to village, person to person, he said. Many of the games, the high kicks, stick pulls, seal hop, have all lost their utility for hunting in an age of gunpowder and gasoline, according to Strange, but for some, they are still very relevant. One of the NYO officials was once hunting on the ice when it began cracking. Strange said using the agility he learned as a child from the scissors broad jump, he was able to dance along the ice chunks back to safety. The Senate is trying again to accomplish what Congress failed to do last year, extend the federal government's chief means of protecting women from domestic abuse while broadening those protections for Native Americans, gays, and lesbians. Both the Democratic-led Senate and the GOP House last year passed extensions of the 1994 Violence Against Women Act, but the two chambers were unable to bridge a partisan divide and reach a compromise. With the Republican losses among women voters last November still a fresh memory, Senate advocates are hoping that it'll be easier this year to find common ground with House Republicans. The Senate bill came up for a test vote this Monday, February 4th, with an 85-8 vote to take the bill up for consideration, essentially the same measure that easily passed the Senate last April. Broad bipartisan support is expected to help pass it again in the Senate chambers, where it then bogged down and failed to pass during the last legislative session due to opposition of Republican congressional leaders. The issue will be a topic of a legislative panel discussion on Saturday, February 16th on the Lakudere Ojibwe Reservation. A federal report says removing 4 hydroelectric dams on the Klamath River in Oregon and California and restoring ecosystems there will provide a big increase in salmon harvest and boost farm revenues. The 400-page report was produced by federal scientists to help the Secretary of Interior evaluate whether it is in the public interest to go ahead with the $1 billion project, which is considered the biggest dam removal in U.S. history if it goes through as planned in 2020. The report notes that wild salmon runs have dropped by more than 90% from the dams, overfishing, poor water quality, diseases, and habitat loss. It said there was a moderate to high probability that removing the dams and restoring the environment would improve water quality, fish habitat, and water quality and reduce fish disease as toxic algae blooms. The project would also improve the ability of fish to cope with global warming by opening up more access to cold water. Overall, the benefits far outweighs the cost by as much as 46.6% to 1, the report found. Dam removal and ecosystem restoration has been endorsed by the states of Oregon and California, the dam owners, and 42 groups representing Indian tribes, salmon fishermen, farmers, and conservation groups in the region. The U.S. Supreme Court has declined to take up a petition of a FBI agent seeking immunity against allegations that he failed to properly investigate the deaths of 2 men because they were Native Americans. That means the lawsuit filed by the families of the deceased men against Matthew Oravec can go on. The families of Stephen Bear Crane and Robert Bugsy Springfield claim Oravec conducted only the most cursory investigations into the 2004 and 2005 deaths of Crow tribal members. The families claim their constitutional rights of equal protection and due process were violated and that Native American victims were regularly denied adequate investigation and prosecution of their cases. The Supreme Court on January 14th declined Oravec's petition to overturn an appeals court ruling denying him immunity from prosecution. A former officer with the 3 affiliated tribes in North Dakota has pled not guilty to roughing up 2 suspects during 2 separate arrests. A grand jury in December indicted Lindrith Tasudal on 4 counts, including 2 charges of civil rights violations. He allegedly assaulted 1 man in November 2010 and another one in December of 2011. Tasudal also charged with witness tampering and false statements. The indictment says he attempted to convince a witness not to report one of the incidents to other law enforcement officials and lied to a federal agent about the assault. Trial is scheduled for March 12th in Bismarck. The Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources has created a new American Indian Tribal Liaison position. Michelle Allness will be responsible for coordinating tribal contacts and building relationships with Wisconsin tribes. Allness has worked with the State Department of Tourism since 2008, most recently as that agency's tribal liaison. The DNR has been clashing with state's Chippewa tribes over a number of high-profile issues, including plans for an open-pit iron ore mine near the Bad River bed of Lake Superior Chippewa's reservation that is on super fast-track in legislation that would exempt mining companies from many environmental regulations, the state's new wolf hunt, and the tribe's recent attempt to jumpstart night deer hunting. And remember the upcoming open pit mining bill listening session scheduled for Saturday, February 9th at the America Inn in Ashland, Wisconsin, bordering the Bad River Ojibwe Reservation, starting at 9 a.m. when public testimony and concerns will be aired about a mining bill that'll open up the Pinocchio Range. The hearings starting at 9 a.m. in the morning will be broadcast live by IndianCountryTV.com during the entire day. Also, IndianCountryTV.com will be broadcasting the entire day of events the next weekend as well on Saturday, February 16th, starting at 3 p.m., and a panel discussion on the open pit mining bill and the Violence Against Women Act and how citizens of northern Wisconsin can get involved. That panel will be featuring Bob Kincaid of Coal River Mountain Watch from West Virginia, Mike Wiggins, Tribal Chair of the Bad River Ojibwe, and Denise Pictou Maloney a Micmac on Canada's Murdered and Missing Project, which is related to the Violence Against Women Act in the United States. That's all going to be on Saturday, February 16th. And that's going to be another roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. We want to say miigwech for joining with us and come back again soon.